The research facility on Kepler 742 bits hung like a pearl in the perpetual twilight of the binary star system. Inside, Dr. Sarah Chen moved through the hydroponics lab with practiced efficiency, her movements precise as she checked the vital signs of experimental crops designed to thrive in low-light conditions. To her colleagues, she was simply another brilliant xenobotanist dedicated to solving the food crisis affecting the outer colonies. None of them knew about the scars hidden beneath her lab coat or the neural implants that kept her combat reflexes suppressed. None of them suspected that 10 years ago, she had been known as the Storm, the most effective operative in humanity's shadow war against the Galactic Empire. Mother, the soft voice drew Sarah's attention to the lab entrance. Kira stood there, her iridescent scales shimmering in the artificial light. The young Mersian's head frills fluttered with concern. "You missed dinner again." Sarah's expression softened as she looked at her adopted daughter. Kira had been the unexpected gift from her last mission, a frightened orphan found in the ruins of an Imperial cleansing operation. The choice to leave active service and raise her had been immediate and irrevocable. "Sorry, little one. These hybrid strains are at a critical stage." Sarah gestured at the rows of bioluminescent plants. "Just 5 more minutes." Kira's inner eyelids blinked in what Sarah had learned was amusement. "You said that 2 hours ago." She moved closer, her movements carrying the natural grace of her species. At 14, she was already taller than Sarah, though her frame remained willowy. Sarah smiled, reaching up to touch one of Kira's facial frills affectionately. "When did you get so wise?" Their moment was interrupted by a subtle vibration through the station's floor. Sarah's augmented senses, even dulled by the suppressants, detected the change in air pressure. Her smile faded as she recognized the pattern. Ships dropping out of hyperspace, multiple signatures. "Kira, go to your room." The shift in Sarah's voice was subtle, but Kira recognized it immediately. It was the tone that brooked no argument, the one that emerged on the rare occasions when real danger threatened their peaceful life. "Mother." Fear tinged Kira's voice. "Now, little one. Remember the drills. Go to your room, lock the door, and don't open it for anyone but me." Sarah was already moving to her workstation, fingers flying over the console as she accessed the station's security feeds. The ships emerging from hyperspace bore Imperial markings. Not the usual patrol vessels that occasionally passed through the system, but heavy assault cruisers. Sarah's heart rate increased, but her hands remained steady as she initiated emergency protocols she'd hoped never to use. "Security breach in sectors 7 through 12, the station's AI announced calmly. "All personnel, please proceed to designated shelter areas." Sarah watched Kira disappear down the corridor before turning to a seemingly ordinary section of wall. Her palm pressed against it, and a hidden scanner read both her handprint and the specific pattern of scars that marked her as who she truly was. The wall panel slid aside, revealing a cache of weapons and equipment she prayed she'd never need again. As she efficiently armed herself, Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. The Empire's presence could be coincidence, a random inspection, or show of force. But she hadn't survived this long by believing in coincidences. Someone had discovered who she was, what she'd done during the war. And now they'd come, not just for her, but for everything she'd built here. The neural suppressants were already fading as emergency protocols activated in her implants. Combat data began scrolling across her enhanced vision, threat assessments and tactical options presenting themselves with crystal clarity. The woman who had spent years cultivating peace felt herself falling away, replaced by the operative she'd once been. But this time was different. 10 years ago, she'd fought for a cause, for abstract concepts of freedom and resistance. Now she fought for something far more precious, a child who had taught her that life could be more than survival and revenge. The station shuddered as the first Imperial shuttles attached to the docking ports. Sarah checked her weapons one final time, then moved into the shadows of the corridor. They would expect to find a scientist, someone soft and unprepared. Instead, they would face the storm. And they would learn why that name had once made Imperial commanders wake in cold sweat. The first group of Imperial troops moved through the facility with typical arrogance, their heavy boots echoing on metal floors. They wore the latest combat armor, carried top-of-the-line weapons, and moved with the confidence of predators who expected only prey. Sarah watched them through the facility's cameras, her enhanced mind calculating angles, blind spots, and optimal engagement zones. She could take them all out now, but that would alert their commanders too quickly. Instead, she needed to understand their objective. Were they here specifically for her, or was this part of a larger operation? Her answer came as she intercepted their communications. Primary target is in the xenobiology section, a clipped voice announced. The Mersian hybrid must be taken alive. Terminate anyone who resists. Sarah's blood ran cold. They weren't here for her. They were here for Kira. Sarah's mind shifted into combat mode, years of training crystallizing into perfect clarity. They were after Kira. Her research notes must have revealed something about her daughter's unique genetic makeup. The Empire's obsession with genetic purity meant they viewed any hybrid species as either an abomination to be destroyed or a specimen to be studied. The station's corridors became a killing ground. Sarah moved like a ghost through maintenance shafts and ventilation ducts, her augmented muscles allowing her to navigate spaces the heavily armored Imperial troops couldn't access. The first squad disappeared without a sound, their armor's built-in communications disabled before they could raise an alarm. Squad 2, report. The command channel crackled with growing concern. Squad 2, acknowledge. Sarah stripped the fallen soldiers of useful equipment, her enhanced vision identifying weaknesses in their latest generation armor. The Empire's arrogance worked in her favor. They'd grown too reliant on technology, forgetting that their enemies might know their systems intimately. A sudden explosion rocked the station. Sarah's heart rate spiked as she checked the security feeds. The Empire was done with subtlety. They were blasting their way through to the residential section, toward Kira. Mother. Kira's frightened voice came through Sarah's secure comm channel. They're outside my door. Stay calm, little one. Sarah was already moving, her augmented legs carrying her at superhuman speed through the station's arteries. Remember what I taught you about the safe room? Yes, but... Kira's voice cut off as another explosion shook the station. Sarah's world narrowed to a singular focus. The next group of Imperial troops she encountered didn't have time to scream. Her neural enhancements, fully awakened now, turned her into something beyond human. Bones broke, armor crumpled, and bodies fell as she carved a path toward her daughter. But she was still too far when she heard the residential section's doors blast inward. Target acquired. A cold voice announced over the Imperial channel. Preparing for extraction. Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up Kira's frightened cry, followed by the sound of struggle. Her daughter wasn't going quietly. She could hear the distinctive crackle of Mersian bioelectric defenses being deployed. But against Imperial shock troops, it wouldn't be enough. Careful with the specimen, another voice commanded. The genetic anomalies must be preserved for study. The rage that filled Sarah wasn't the cold, professional anger of the storm. This was something primal, something that made her combat programs surge into overdrive. Her implants warned of dangerous spikes in adrenaline and neural activity, but she ignored them. She burst into the residential section like a force of nature, her weapons blazing with lethal precision. 3 Imperial soldiers fell before they could turn, their armor useless against ammunition specifically designed to penetrate their defenses. A 4th raised his weapon, but Sarah was already inside his guard, her augmented fist crushing his throat through supposedly impenetrable plating. But she was too late. Through the broken doorway of Kira's room, she saw her daughter struggling in the grip of 2 soldiers, a 3rd preparing to inject her with something. Kira's scales were flaring with frightened bioluminescence, her bioelectric discharge having already overloaded 1 soldier's systems. One more step, the officer in charge warned, and will be forced to sedate her. The process can be unpredictable for hybrids. Sarah froze, her combat systems presenting dozens of scenarios, none with acceptable outcomes. At this range, with Kira in their grip, she couldn't guarantee her daughter's safety. "You're making a mistake," Sarah said, her voice carrying the deadly calm that had once terrified Imperial commanders. "Let her go, and you might survive this." The officer laughed, the sound distorted through his helmet speakers. "The famous storm, reduced to protecting a genetic aberration. How far you've fallen." "She's my daughter." "She's an abomination," the officer spat, "but one that will serve the Empire's purposes. Her unique genetic structure could be the key to understanding how to prevent such mistakes in the future." Sarah's enhanced vision caught a subtle movement, Kira's head frills rippling in a pattern they'd practiced countless times. A signal. Her daughter was ready. What happened next occurred too fast for unaugmented human eyes to follow. Kira released her most powerful bioelectric burst, temporarily overloading her captor's armor systems. In that same instant, Sarah moved, her neural enhancements pushing her body beyond its normal limits. The officer managed to fire once before Sarah reached him. The shot went wide, superheated plasma scorching the wall. Then Sarah was on him, her rage finally finding its target. The sound of breaking bones and tearing metal filled the room. When it was over, Sarah stood amid the carnage, her breathing heavy not from exertion, but from the effort of reining in her combat systems. Her implants were screaming warnings about dangerous neural feedback, but none of that mattered as she turned to Kira. Her daughter stood shakily, her scales still flickering with residual energy. There were tears in her eyes, but also a strength that made Sarah's heart swell with pride. "Mother," Kira whispered, "your eyes." Sarah knew what her daughter was seeing. When fully activated, her combat systems made her eyes glow with an unnatural light, a side effect of the neural enhancements that had made her the Empire's most feared operative. "It's still me, little one." Sarah moved forward, carefully keeping her blood-stained hands away from Kira's scales. "Are you hurt?" Before Kira could answer, the station's AI broke in with new warnings. More Imperial ships were arriving. This had only been the first wave. "We need to go," Sarah said, her tactical systems already plotting escape routes. "This isn't our home anymore." Kira looked around the ruined room that had been her sanctuary for so many years. "Where will we go?" "Somewhere safe." Sarah checked her weapons, mind racing through contingencies she'd hoped never to use. "But first, we're going to show the Empire exactly why they should have left us alone." The storm was back, and this time she wasn't fighting for a cause or a rebellion. She was fighting for her daughter. The maintenance tunnels beneath the research facility had never been meant for human access. Sarah moved through them with practiced ease, Kira following close behind. Her daughter's natural bioluminescence provided the only light they needed, though Sarah's enhanced vision could navigate in complete darkness. "The emergency shuttle is still intact," Sarah whispered, checking the schematic overlay in her augmented vision. "But they'll be watching all official exit points." "What about the waste disposal system?" Kira suggested, her voice steady despite everything that had happened. "The magnetic acceleration tubes." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. She'd trained her daughter well. "Exactly what I was thinking. But first, we need to make a stop." They emerged into the facility's data core, a maze of quantum processors and cooling systems. Sarah's fingers flew over a terminal, bypassing security protocols she herself had helped design. Within moments, she had what she needed, proof of why the Empire had come for Kira. The data confirmed her worst fears. Someone had discovered Kira's unique genetic structure, how her immersion DNA had adapted to include certain human characteristics after Sarah had saved her life with an experimental treatment years ago. The Empire believed this could be the key to creating enhanced soldiers, combining the best traits of multiple species. "They've been watching us for months," Sarah said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Monitoring your development, running secret scans during routine medical checks." Kira's head frills drooped. "This is my fault." If I wasn't. No. Sarah turned to her daughter, her glowing combat eyes softening. Never think that. You are perfect exactly as you are. The Empire is wrong. Diversity isn't weakness. It's evolution. A distant explosion reminded them that they were running out of time. Sarah quickly uploaded the facility's data to a secure quantum chip, then initiated a cascade failure in the system. No one else would be able to access these records. They reached the waste disposal system just as emergency lighting kicked in. The magnetic acceleration tubes, used to launch compressed waste into the system's star, stretched before them like a massive artillery barrel. This is going to be uncomfortable, Sarah warned, pulling out specialized shields from her equipment cache. But the magnetic field will mask our escape from their sensors. She helped Kira into one of the shield units, carefully checking all seals. The Empire would be expecting them to run, to hide. Instead, Sarah had a different plan, one that would remind them exactly why they had feared the storm. "Mother," Kira said as Sarah prepared the launch sequence, "I saw what you did back there. How you moved, how you fought. Was that what you were before?" Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "Part of it. But I was different then. Colder. Empty." She touched Kira's face gently. "You gave me something worth more than revenge or duty. You gave me love." The tube's magnetic field hummed to life. Before they entered, Sarah activated a final sequence on her neural implants. Across the facility, carefully hidden explosives began to detonate. Not in vital areas. She wouldn't risk the lives of her civilian colleagues, but in specific locations that would keep the Imperial forces occupied. "Where are we going?" Kira asked as they positioned themselves in the tube. "To wake some old ghosts," Sarah replied. "I wasn't the only one who fought the Empire from the shadows, and I wasn't the only one who went into hiding when the war supposedly ended." The magnetic field caught them, accelerating them to near impossible speeds. Sarah's enhanced body could handle it, and Kira's mergent physiology was naturally resistant to high forces. As they shot through the tube, Sarah's mind was already plotting their next moves. First, they would contact Marcus Chen. No relation, but a former Resistance quartermaster who now ran a legitimate shipping business in the Outer Rim. He could provide them with untraceable transportation and equipment. Then Diana Wells, once the Resistance's best hacker, now living quietly as a systems administrator on Europa. One by one, Sarah would reactivate the old networks, the hidden cells of fighters and specialists who had never truly surrendered to Imperial rule. Not for revenge, though that would come, but to protect Kira and every other child the Empire deemed impure. They emerged from the tube into open space, their shields protecting them from both vacuum and the intense radiation of the binary stars. Sarah's augmented vision spotted their ride. A small stealth ship she'd hidden in a debris field years ago, just in case. As they maneuvered toward it using built-in thrusters, Sarah saw Imperial ships still arriving around the research facility. They would find nothing but destruction and dead ends. The storm they sought had already slipped through their fingers. But soon, they would realize their mistake. They had attacked thinking they would find a retired operative, a scientist who had gone soft. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. A mother protecting her child. The stealth ship's airlock opened silently, welcoming them aboard. As Sarah helped Kira out of her shield unit, she allowed herself a moment of fierce pride. Her daughter was strong, adaptable, and brave. Everything the Empire claimed pure species should be. "What happens now?" Kira asked, watching through the viewscreen as the research facility grew smaller behind them. Sarah's combat systems were already plotting hyperspace trajectories, calculating the safest routes to their first contacts. "Now, little one, I teach you everything I know, because the Empire won't stop hunting us. And we won't hide," Kira said, her scales flickering with determination. "No," Sarah agreed, her eyes glowing with renewed purpose. "We won't hide. We'll show them that their greatest mistake wasn't finding us. The stealth ship's engines powered up, preparing for the jump to hyperspace. Their greatest mistake was giving us a reason to fight back. 3 months of carefully orchestrated chaos had left the Empire reeling. Supply lines disrupted, communications networks compromised, research facilities mysteriously destroyed, all without a single trace leading back to their source. But Sarah knew they were getting close to the truth. The Imperial cruiser's security feeds played across her augmented vision as she moved silently through its corridors. Diana's hack had given them complete access to the ship's systems, allowing Sarah to navigate undetected. The intelligence they'd gathered over the past months had led them here, to the heart of the Empire's genetic research division. Guards approaching, Kira's voice whispered through their secure channel. Her daughter was safely aboard their stealth ship, coordinating the operation using skills Sarah had spent months teaching her. 3 signatures, heading your way. Sarah smiled, proud of how quickly Kira had adapted to their new life. The past months had been difficult, constantly moving, training, planning. But Kira had shown an intelligence and resilience that constantly amazed her. Got them, Sarah replied softly, pressing herself into a maintenance alcove. The guards passed without noticing her, their armor sensors fooled by the advanced stealth tech Marcus had provided. The old quartermaster had outdone himself, drawing on a decade of accumulated resources to support their campaign. The ship's research wing was her target. According to the files they'd decrypted, this vessel served as a mobile command center for Project Unity, the Empire's secret program, to purify the galaxy's genetic diversity. Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up voices from behind the sealed laboratory doors. The hybrid samples are unprecedented, a clinical voice declared. The integration of traits, the stability of the genetic structure, it's far beyond anything we've achieved in the labs. And you're certain about the catalyst. Another voice, one that made Sarah's combat systems surge with recognition. Admiral Venn, the architect of the Empire's genetic purity programs. The human mother's genetic modifications were the key. Something about her enhanced biology created a bridge between species, allowing for stable hybridization. If we can replicate it. Sarah had heard enough. She placed breaching charges on the door's weak points, her neural systems calculating the optimal blast pattern. The Empire hadn't just stumbled upon Kira by accident. They'd been studying them both, seeing them as specimens rather than people. The explosion took them completely by surprise. Sarah burst through the smoke, her movements a blur of lethal efficiency. The laboratory's security forces fell before they could raise their weapons. Scientists scattered, trying to protect their precious data. In the chaos, Admiral Venn attempted to reach an emergency terminal. "Lock down the data," he shouted. "We can't lose." Sarah's enhanced fist caught him in the chest, slamming him against a wall. Around them, alarms blared as the ship realized it was under attack. "Hello, Admiral," Sarah said, her combat eyes glowing in the emergency lighting. "We need to talk about your interest in my daughter." "The storm," Venn wheezed, blood trickling from his mouth. "You don't understand. What we discovered, it could change everything. And conflicts between species create perfect soldiers by erasing what makes us different." Sarah's grip tightened. "By destroying children like Kira because they don't fit your definition of pure." "Mother," Kira's voice came through the comm, urgent now. "Imperial reinforcements just dropped out of hyperspace. 3 minutes until they're in range." Sarah activated the virus Diana had prepared, watching as Project Unity's data began deleting itself from the Empire's networks. Years of research, generations of attempts to purify the galaxy's species, all of it disappearing into encrypted quantum noise. "You can't stop progress," Venn gasped. "The Empire will never accept impurity." "That's where you're wrong," Sarah replied. "The galaxy is changing. Every hybrid child, every mixed community, every peaceful cooperation between species proves that your vision of purity is dying. And after today, everyone will know what you tried to do." She released the Admiral, letting him slump to the floor. On her command, Diana's virus wasn't just deleting data, it was broadcasting proof of Project Unity's atrocities across every Imperial channel. The experiments, the disappeared children, the forced purification of entire communities, all of it exposed. 30 seconds, Kira warned. Sarah took one last look at the ruined laboratory, at the fearful faces of scientists who had forgotten their humanity in pursuit of an impossible ideal of purity. Then she ran, her augmented legs carrying her swiftly through the ship's corridors toward her extraction point. The first Imperial ships were firing as she reached the airlock. Using her momentum, she launched herself into space, trusting the sophisticated suit Marcus had provided to protect her. Behind her, the cruiser's laboratories burned, years of unethical research reduced to drifting atoms. Their stealth ship decloaked just long enough to scoop her up, then vanished again before the Imperial vessels could lock on. As Sarah removed her helmet in the airlock, Kira was there, wrapping her arms around her mother. "Did we do it?" Kira asked, her scales shimmering with anxiety and hope. "Did we stop them?" Sarah held her daughter close, feeling the perfect uniqueness of her hybrid form, not a mistake to be corrected, but a miracle to be celebrated. "We did more than stop them," she replied. "We showed the galaxy what they really are. And more importantly," she pulled back slightly, looking into Kira's uniquely patterned eyes, "we showed them what we can become when we stop fearing differences." As their ship slipped into hyperspace, Sarah knew the Empire wouldn't stop. They would rebuild, try to bury the truth, continue their quest for genetic purity. But something had changed today. A crack had formed in their facade of superiority, and through that crack, hope would grow. "Where do we go now?" Kira asked, her head frills rippling with curiosity. Sarah smiled, thinking of all the messages they'd received during their campaign. From other hybrid families, from resistance cells, from those who believed in a galaxy where differences were celebrated rather than erased. "Now," she said, "we find the others, because we're not alone anymore, little one, and we never will be again." 1 year after the destruction of Project Unity, the abandoned mining outpost on Centauri VI had become something extraordinary. What started as a temporary hideout had grown into a sanctuary for hybrid families and those fleeing Imperial persecution. Sarah stood on the observation deck, watching children of various species playing in the artificial gravity wells. Her enhanced vision caught Kira teaching younger hybrids how to control their unique abilities. Her daughter had grown into her role as a mentor, helping others understand that their differences were strengths, not flaws to be corrected. "Incoming transmission," Diana's voice announced through the station's secure channels. "Imperial frequencies, but using our old resistance codes." Sarah's combat systems activated automatically, scanning for threats. The sanctuary's defenses were formidable. A year of Marcus's smuggling operations had ensured that, but the Empire's recent silence had made her uneasy. "Source verified," Diana continued, surprise evident in her voice. "It's Admiral Chen." Sarah's breath caught. Unlike Ven, Admiral Chen had been one of the few Imperial officers who'd opposed Project Unity. His disappearance 6 months ago had been a mystery. "Put him through," Sarah commanded, her neural implants recording everything for analysis. Storm. Chen's holographic form appeared, his uniform torn, face haggard. "I don't have much time." "The Empire. They're implementing Protocol Zero. The hardliners have taken control." Sarah's tactical systems immediately began calculating possibilities. Protocol Zero had been theoretical, a last resort plan to cleanse entire sectors of space of what the Empire deemed genetic impurity. "How long?" she asked, already sending emergency alerts throughout the sanctuary. "Hours. They're targeting every known hybrid settlement, every mixed species community. But that's not all." Chen's image flickered. "They found a way to weaponize your research, the genetic bridges you created to save Kira. They're turning it into a virus that will target anyone with mixed genetic markers." Sarah's mind raced. Her work to save Kira had never been intended for weapons, but she should have known the Empire would corrupt it. Where's the research facility? Sending coordinates now. Chen looked over his shoulder nervously. But Storm, it's a trap. They know you'll come. They're counting on it. Of course they are, Sarah replied calmly. Thank you, Admiral. After the transmission ended, Sarah stood motionless, her combat systems analyzing options while her human heart wrestled with the implications. She had started this by saving Kira, by proving that hybrid life wasn't just possible but beautiful. Now she had to end it. You're going. Kira's voice came from behind her. Her daughter had grown so quiet in her movements, even Sarah's enhanced senses hadn't detected her approach. I have to. Sarah turned, seeing not the frightened child she'd rescued years ago, but a young woman who understood the weight of choices. What they've created, it would be genocide. Kira's scales shimmered with determination. We have to. I'm coming with you. Kira. I've trained for this, Kira interrupted. Everything you've taught me, everything I am, it's meant for this moment. They wanted to use me as proof that hybrids were monsters. Let me prove we're the future instead. Sarah saw the truth in her daughter's eyes. She had raised Kira not just to survive, but to fight for what was right. To deny her this moment would be to deny everything they'd fought for. Diana, Sarah called, informed the council. Execute Evacuation Protocol Delta. Get everyone to the backup sanctuaries. She turned to Kira. This won't be like our previous missions. If we fail, we won't, Kira said simply. We have something they don't understand. And what's that? Each other. Hours later, their stealth ship emerged from hyperspace near the coordinates Chen had provided. The Imperial Research Facility was a fortress, a massive space station bristling with weapons and surrounded by warships. 16 capital ships, Diana reported through their secure channel. They're really expecting you. No, Sarah corrected, watching Kira prepare their specialized equipment. They're expecting the Storm, a lone operative driven by revenge. They're not expecting us. They had spent the journey fine-tuning their plan. Sarah's neural systems had merged with Kira's natural bioelectric abilities, creating something unprecedented. Together, they could interface with Imperial systems in ways that shouldn't be possible. Hybrid technology for hybrid warriors. The battle that followed would be remembered as the day the Empire's illusion of supremacy shattered. Mother and daughter moved as one through the station's defenses, Sarah's enhanced combat abilities complemented perfectly by Kira's unique powers. Imperial forces found their weapons disabled by bioelectric pulses, their communications corrupted by impossible hybrid code. They reached the central laboratory just as the virus was being prepared for deployment. The Empire's scientists stared in shock at what their sensors told them couldn't exist. Human and Mersian energy signatures working in perfect harmony. Impossible, the lead scientist whispered. No, Sarah corrected, watching Kira interface with their systems, her scales glowing with power. Inevitable. The virus data was purged, the research destroyed. But more importantly, Kira broadcast the truth, not just about the Empire's planned genocide, but about the reality of hybrid existence, the beauty of adaptation, the strength of diversity, the power of love across all artificial boundaries. When it was over, when the facility had been destroyed and the Imperial fleet lay in ruins, Sarah held her daughter in their ship's cockpit, watching the explosion fade into space. We did it, Kira said softly, her scales finally dimming to their normal luster. You did it, Sarah corrected. You showed them something they never expected, that the future belongs to those who can adapt, who can bring different worlds together. As they headed home to their sanctuary, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. She had begun this journey trying to protect one child, but had ended up helping to forge a new future for countless others. The Empire had feared hybrid life because they couldn't control it, couldn't predict it. But that was exactly why it would prevail. Mother, Kira said as they approached the sanctuary, where dozens of hybrid families waited for news. What happens now? Sarah smiled, her combat systems finally powering down, leaving just a mother's love and pride. Now we build something new, something that celebrates all the beautiful impossibilities that make us who we are. The storm had been a weapon, but Sarah Chen was something far more powerful, a mother who had learned that the strongest force in the galaxy wasn't purity or power, but the ability